should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. Preferably in a residential area.
The following thoughts on Hoppe Hour do not represent Cox Media Group or its sponsoring. Anything you hear may and will be used against you. Thank you. Voted as best local podcast in Tampa Bay by the Creative Loafing. You're listening to Hoppe Hour.
What up? What is happening? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe. And on the phone line from the Humble and Fred Show on Canada Labs on SiriusXM Radio, the host, Humble Howard Glassman, is on. What's up, man?
Hey, Ryan. Thank you for having me on. What a pleasure to be on an award-winning podcast versus the podcast that Fred and I do, which is, well, it's sad, really, what we do every day.
This is the first interview I've had that is sort of, quote-unquote, international. I've never interviewed someone outside of America. Aren't you honored to be the first guest since you're up in Canada?
I'm completely honored to be interviewed on, do you call it the Hoppe Hour, or is it just the Ryan Hoppe podcast? What's the name of this thing?
Hoppe Hour.
Hoppe Hour, I love that.
Get it?
I'm happy to be, listen, when you reached out to us a few years ago, and it was cool. You were one of the first Americans to kind of catch on to the Humble and Fred experience, and I'm happy to be part of your show.
How has the show been going? I feel like it's bigger than ever since you guys are on a SiriusXM and anybody in North America can listen. So how's the show been?
It's interesting because someone asked us the other day if being on Sirius has helped us with our podcast numbers. And at first I didn't think it would because, we started off as terrestrial radio guys doing a typical morning show. And then we sort of transitioned later in our careers, about 4.5 years ago, to a podcast. And then we began, we got sort of picked up by different radio stations, and finally XM hired us. It's going pretty good. I would say this. Like last week, it's funny we're doing this interview today because last week we've been on iTunes podcast rankings since October of 2011. To give it some context, there are tens of thousands of podcasts. Everyone hears about the Joe Rogan Experience or Mark Maron or, This American Life or Serial. But, there are so many people, including, Hoppe Hour. And you've got, by the way, great numbers. I saw, how many downloads you've got, and over 65,000 people have heard it. I mean, that's amazing, Ryan, because what I'm going to get to eventually when this sentence ends is it's so hard to get yourself noticed. So,
yeah.
Of the tens of thousands of podcasts, Fred and I had a little bit of an advantage because we had a lot of brand equity in Toronto, the biggest city in Canada, and some brand equity across Canada as well. So last week, of all comedy podcasts on iTunes, we were number 2. Number 1 was Joe Rogan. Number 2 was Humble and Fred. Number 3 was Mark Maron. So pretty good company to be in. But and that changes every day. As you know, people download shows, new shows come up, and whatever. But the category that really blew our minds was all podcasts, all categories. So number 1 in that category is Serial, the most famous podcast in the world right now, along with This American Life and a few others. And in number 8 spot was Humble and Fred. And I got to be honest with you, Ryan, that was ridiculous. We had no business being there. The fact that we were even in the top 100 in that category is mind-blowing. Now, of course, it comes and goes. So as of this morning, we were, I think, 50th. But it's just, for us, it sort of is a bit of, I don't know, not vindication, because we never felt like anyone was, out to get us. But the fact that we don't have a big organization anymore behind us, SiriusXM isn't there to promote our podcast. So all of this is by way of saying that, yeah, we're pretty stoked about how the show is doing, and I think there is an element of people in America that have discovered us can also download our podcast. Is that the longest answer anyone's ever given you on this show?
Dude, it makes perfect sense, though, because isn't it weird to think that us just turning on the mics and talking makes people's day, and then they download it and they listen? Because when we have our mics on, it just feels like us talking, but it's weird to think that this show will get a lot of listens. Isn't it very flattering when we have fans,
Well, here's the thing I would say, because I know just from talking to you, you worked on some standard morning shows, shock jock, zoo style morning shows. The problem with those is they had their day.
Exactly.
The difference is none of them ever sound like who they really are. They sound like who they think the audience wants them to be. And when in actual fact, what we're doing, our radio show is always pretty authentic. And the show we do on Sirius is really, people always say, is it like Stern? Is it like Opie and Anthony or Opie and Jim? And it's not, for an American reference, it's kind of like that. We would be the Stern Opie and Anthony of Canada. But our show is just a little bit different. What we aren't is a typical morning guys going, hey, everybody, welcome to the 15th caller. Call us and tell us why you hate your wife. We don't do any of that.
Yeah.
We do kind of what we're doing right now. We talk about things. We try and, be our authentic selves as best we can.
That's what I like about you guys, too, is there's so many of these shock jocks that are somehow on the radio right now that have been doing the same crap since the 90s, and they copied Howard. And it's like you can see who the true talent is. Like you guys, Opie and Jimmy, Anthony, Howard, they're all the quote-unquote shock jocks that evolved with the times. But then there's plenty of guys we all know that just keep doing the same crap, and it's run its course,
Well, you'd know better about what the scene is, in the States. You were saying you worked in Cleveland, you're familiar with radio in Chicago, now you're working in Florida. When I go to America, or when I flip around the internet and listen to a show, I'm always struck by the fact that radio in the States, and in Canada, by the way, too, when you say it seems like they're stuck in the 90s, it's almost like I listen to these people, I go, man, haven't they watched television in the last 20 years? Have you not seen how TV's evolved and how being more real and more authentic is really what people crave? Being less authentic and more, here's the thing. If you're the morning show in Cleveland, I know the consultants say, oh, you got to talk about the Kardashians, you got to talk about, and you got to be outrageous. But in actual fact, the number of people you run into in a day that give two, by the way, are we swearing on the show or not?
Say whatever the fuck you want, Howard.
Okay. The number of people that give two fucking shits about the Kardashians or anything else. Like a buddy of mine was working at terrestrial radio, and he said, I'm having trouble with my show prep. And I said, why? He goes, well, I want to touch on this one, I want to touch on that. And I said, let me ask you a question. If we were to go to a dinner party or out to a barbecue with friends, would you have to prepare for that? And he goes, what do you mean? I go, well, wouldn't you just, hey, how you doing, Ryan? Good, I haven't seen you for a while. What's going on? Have you heard about this Trump character? And how about that thing? Or, man, one of my kids is trying to get into university. Those are all natural conversations that really, I think, well, for Fred and I think that resonates more with people.
I think the biggest thing is these radio companies and consultants just throw all these random hosts and sidekicks and expect them to make radio magic, and they don't get to know each other. They just do War of the Roses, and they do all these dating segments.
I want, keep going. There's a bunch there's War of the Roses.
Yeah.
There's of course, the giggle chick always does the Showbiz Report. It's always called some version of her name. There's all those contests. They talk. They're constantly. If they're playing music, they're constantly talking over a bed. Which I always find hilarious.
True.
Like, who in real life is talking over a track? Other than radio.
So
people.
True. Because then the worst part is a lot of these guys off the mic have a lot to say. They're very unique guys, but on the air, these consultants or companies make them be so one-dimensional, and it drives me crazy. It's like, come on, enough with the fake prank calls. Like, my show is just like all your shows where it's just people talking. I just don't know why everyone's so afraid of just having a conversation on the radio. Like, it's cool to have some bits, but talk, be human. You know what I mean?
Well, sure, it's great. Stern does phony phone calls. Not everyone has a staff like his, and Stern does parody songs, but a lot of that is supplied by the audience. But using Stern is a great example because it's a great reference. Anyone listening who's heard Stern will get some of these references. Stern talking to his staff about what's going on with his staff. I'm not a huge fan of it because I really don't care what's going on with Sal and Richard. But when Stern's talking to Robert Downey Jr., and you've got Robert Downey Jr. in front of you for an hour and a half, there is no better form of entertainment. Forget TV or radio. That's why Stern is so well respected now versus where he was, say, 25 years ago, is because people can hear the authenticity that he gets to have with these celebrities or well-known people. That it's one of the things that I admire most about him. All the other stuff, yeah, I mean, some of it's really cool. The phony phone calls are great sometimes, but him talking, there's patterns. Every time JD comes in, him and Fred, do the JD voice for 20 minutes, and it's cute and everything, but it's not anywhere near as powerful as him talking to Ellen DeGeneres.
There is a thing, though, when you wake up, you just love to hear what's going on with High-Pitched Eric. I mean, that makes my morning sometimes. Like, they were going at it with one of the other Wag Pack members, and they had
I heard it this week. It was Fred the Elephant Boy had got Eric charged. Don't get me wrong. There are moments like that are pretty compelling.
It was funny.
Like, generally hearing about High-Pitched Eric, fucking losing weight to get the flat Ronnie. Like, believe me, Ryan, I'm a huge Stern fan. As a broadcaster, I'm a huge Stern fan because I hear how good he is at the craft.
Yeah.
My point is, one of the things that we do, like, again, using the Humble and Fred show, if you've never heard it, take some of the better elements of Stern. Like, we think we're great interviewers. We have a style. We've had everyone from Alex Lifeson of Rush to, the national newscaster in Canada in here. He did like an hour and 20 minutes with us, and he was so tickled by how comfortable we made him feel, and we got to talk about shit he'd never discuss. But we don't. But that to me is the art, and that to me is what you're doing on this show. Is it's conversation.
Yeah.
We're just shooting the breeze. Now, if I'm interested in radio, I mean, I looked at some of the people you've interviewed, Jimmy Norton, and I think if you're interested in hearing those people talk, this is a great place to hear them because you do a good job.
Howard, I appreciate it, man, coming from you because, like, this is the type of radio I want to do. I hate the word shock jock. I hate the term hot talk where they define it. I just see it as talk radio, and I want to be the person for the quote-unquote millennials. I want to be that form of entertainment because they didn't grow up with it. You know what I mean? They didn't really grow up with Howard.
Defining talk radio, so you have FM morning shows that do this. Whether they're shock jocks, let's just put them in the category of FM morning shows. And they have a certain style, and they play a very few songs, and they talk a lot, but it's all sort of fake and bullshitty. And most of them, to be honest with you, you're right. Some of them are interesting, but most of them aren't funny. Then you've got talk radio. Now, in Canada, it's a little less maybe inflammatory, but, it's the news talk station, and they take topics, and they've got the mayor on, and they're talking about bike lanes, and for God's sake, most of what they're talking about makes you want to fucking kill yourself because you think, oh my God, and some of them are friends of mine, and you think, did you just do 20 minutes on a new bike lane on one of the main thoroughfares in the city? Because I don't know how you didn't jump out the window. So there, and then in the States, of course, it's the Hannity, it's the outrageous, it's how dare you take the Second Amendment, fuck. So somewhere in between what you're talking about is having a conversation that doesn't have to be anything. Can be funny, it can be serious, it can be heartfelt, it can be interested in whatever it is that you're interested, because then people, I think that connects with people.
When did you guys sort of like change as a show? Did you guys used to be the more like edgier shock jocks, or have you always been this type of show?
We've always been this type of show. Even when we were the number one 18 to 34 morning show in Toronto, which is the third largest market, by the way, in North America. Just to give you some context, it's a big, big market. But our style of morning radio, even in the 90s, was we weren't like, yes, we were the edgy morning show. When Stern came to town, we were the show that he sort of targeted, and that was cool. But we were never pricks about it. We were never. We weren't the angry fucking, hey, everyone, we're going to tie a pig to a guy. We were more of the funny, self-deprecating. When Dave Grohl would come on the show, we'd make fun of ourselves. Like, what was wrong with your publicist that you got fucking dropped off here? That was our vibe.
Yeah.
Then we went to talk radio, where we played no music for a couple of years and did sort of a rock and roll talk station in Toronto, which was great. It was all sort of called Talk Radio for Guys, and we could talk about hockey, barbecues, chicks, politics, entertainment, families, kids, and that's what we did. We were never really the the morning zoo, woo woo, with the sound effects, and our style of morning radio was always just a little on the more irreverent comedy side, more, again, self-deprecating, kind of like, I've always been a Letterman fan. I would say our show was kind of Letterman-esque in that we made ourselves the brunt of the joke, and sort of that was our vibe. Is that?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm keep wondering if I've answered the question or if I'm just boring the shit out of myself.
No, it's making sense. How hard was it when you guys lost the gig and then another person came in and did a much more like edgier show? Like, did you and Fred not talk for a while? Like, how does it go down when you guys lose the gig like 10 to 15 years ago?
We didn't lose the gig.
Okay.
Here's what happened. We were working for a big company, and we had been together at that point probably 10 or 11 years, and again our ratings were, we were solid. By that point, Stern came to town in 98, and we were number 1. Then we went to number 3, and then we kind of came back to number 2. And from 99 till 2001, we were a solid number 2 to Stern, which we always thought was pretty good because we thought, hey, listen, the guy's the biggest media radio star in North America, and hey, if I wasn't on the air, I'd be listening to him. But he wasn't for everyone, and he was a different guy at the time. Then this company we worked for said, hey, guys, we're thinking of starting a talk station for guys. It would be basically your show, no music, and that's all we want. To Fred and I, that was like, wow, this is great. And they said to us, hey, this could be your job for the rest of your life. At the time, I was 41, Fred was 44, and their thinking was, could guys in their early 40s relate to guys who like the type of radio we did? Now, of course, fast forward, Howard Stern just turned 62, and guys from 20 to 60 are still listening to him. So we weren't fired. We said, okay, we'll take this new job at a new station you guys are doing. And the guy that took over for us basically, shit the bed for about 2.5 years because, we had a pretty big legacy, and he, it was tough for him. And then eventually he got his own audience, and yeah, he got to be a little bit more shocking and a little bit whatever, but I'm going to be honest with you, he never touched us for the quality of the show. Like, not even close.
Because what you guys do is more like classy and smart radio. You never have to go for like lowbrow humor. Like even when you guys swear and you guys get more like, let's say, a bit filthy, it's never where it's like, oh my God, why'd they say that? You know what I mean? It's never like cringeworthy.
Yeah, we try to stay away from being douchey. But listen, Ryan, we did some stuff in our time at the Edge, where we were for a long time. It sounds on the surface it was pretty fucking dirty and weird, but it was mostly, again, Letterman-esque. We had a contest called Humble and Fred's Really Tough Contest, where in order to qualify for $50,000, people had to do a series of tasks, and every week it was different. And so one of the things we had a couple come in and have sex in a tent in our studio. We had a guy do a billboard shoot naked on a billboard, covered up, but he was basically naked in the middle of Toronto. Another one, we had a guy lick a pig's ass like a little pot-bellied pig, which was pretty funny. We had this guy with a pot-bellied pig. We had another guy had to give his friend a prostate exam. Those are the kind of things we did. We had a girl have to get 10 of her friends to come into the studio, and during 1 2-hour period in the show, she had to collect 10 sperm samples. So we had these guys go into a washroom near our studio and jerk off every few minutes. So it's not like we didn't do anything dirty. We just did it in a kind of
different way.
I use Letterman as a reference because those are all sort of Letterman-esque, stupid human trick style bits.
Now, what did your wife or any of your girlfriends think of this sort of like edgy humor? Did they like it, or did they even listen to the show?
Well, when I was married, my wife, she wasn't really a big fan of the music that we played. It was alternative.
Yeah.
She loved the show. I mean, she never, if you're married to me and I say, hey, we just thought of this great thing, we're going to have a guy give his friend a prostate exam. She's like, great, honey, just keep bringing home money. And then later, once we got divorced and I had a girlfriend for the first few years of Humble and Fred online and on Sirius, she was a fan of the show. She had a good sense of humor. Sometimes my kids will see stuff we've done, or they'll see the Facebook post and they'll be like, oh, I'm like super proud of my dad who, just spent, 20 minutes talking about, whatever. But yeah, mostly it's fine. I mean, again, to the point I'm trying to make is what we did wasn't just sort of dirty for dirty's sake. We always tried to do it cleverly and we had a guy have to be handcuffed to 2 women for a weekend. I mean, sure, it sounds provocative, but it was actually pretty funny and kind of clever. And that was the kind of things that we looked for.
Did you guys ever get, like, suspended or have to pay a fine? Was there ever a bit that went too far?
Yeah, I got suspended for a week because I came up with a bit where we were tricking one of our biggest sponsors. We had this, for a year, we had this thing called Humble and Fred beer, and it was just horrible. The running gag with the beer is that we made it ourselves, and it was shitty, like all homemade booze. And we thought the thing would be, it would be funny if we could get one of our biggest advertisers who owned a brewery to taste our beer. Anyway, the point is, we fucked him over, and we didn't think it through, and he was super embarrassed and canceled his advertising, and I got suspended.
What's that like? Did you feel bad when you get suspended, or what's that like?
Well, it was a good lesson because I'm not even describing the bit correctly, but the point is, at the moment we got him to taste our beer, and we told the audience we'd put his beer in our bottle, like we were going to trick this guy, and then we realized, fuck, because the running gag was our beer's horrible, and he was about to say how horrible our beer was, but we told the audience, hey, we're going to put his beer and see if he can recognize it, and then it all went wrong. At the second he put it to his lips, we're like, we didn't think this through. What we should have done is have him say, no, boys, this beer is amazing, knowing all full well it was his beer, but that would have been the bit. Anyway, I felt bad because he canceled $200,000. I also got in trouble a couple times. We did a lot of religious stuff, so we had this idea that we would crucify our producer for Easter one year.
Yeah.
That went fucking horribly, horribly wrong.
What happened?
Well, just talking about it. Like, we had this whole idea that, hey, we were right in our studios were right downtown Toronto, like right in the middle of the city, would be like Times Square. And we said, hey, at this appropriate moment, we're going to take our producer, Jason, and we're going to duct tape him to a light pole to make it look like he's been crucified. And we just had, for a week, all we had was like hate mail and the Catholic, this league and the Toronto Diocese, and it was like that was just and the other thing we were giving out was chocolate Jesuses.
Oh, that's the worst when they get involved and they're offended. It's like, really? Do you think if God's real, that God's going to be mad at the Humble and Fred show for a little
100%.
bit they did? Oh, I hate that.
Well, the other thing too is, and I talk about being Jewish on the show all the time, although I'm not religious at all. I just happen to be born Jewish, and I got more of the hate mail about this than Freddie because they knew I was Jewish, and they thought, here's this Jew making fun of their funny little religion.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't get it. I think your show would be much more controversial if it came out now because I don't know what it's like up there, but here in America, Howard, we're a bunch of pussies that get offended by everything. We need to say we're sorry. We don't have any balls, and we can't speak our mind without somebody writing a little blog that somehow gains traction. It's ridiculous. I despise the fake outrage. What's it like up there?
I mean, it's similar. Funny thing is, on the Humble and Fred show now, we are way more, because it's satellite, it's explicit, it's the internet, we can say anything we want. I mean, there are literally huge chunks of our show that could never run on terrestrial radio. We just would be inundated with hate mail because, we talk about religion being a made-up story and, the great guy. And, one of the references I call the Sky Muppet. People pray to the Sky Muppet, and and our listeners all say, Sky Muppet blessings upon you. And the funny thing about America right now is very for people who think Canada is the same. It is similar but different. We're a completely different country when it comes to politics, religion, when it comes to obviously gun control. You can't get elected president without having a religious connection. There's only been one Catholic president in your entire history. Like, think about that. That the American president doesn't get to be president unless there is a component of religion, and it has to be a certain kind of religion.
Yeah, it's very
in
traditional.
Canada,
you know what I mean?
Well, it's also a little bit backwards, to be honest with you. In Canada, you can be elected prime minister, like we just did. The young prime minister, his kid's name is Kid. He's 43 years old, named Justin Trudeau. And at no point in the campaign is his religious views even an issue. That would be one of the biggest differences.
What do you guys think of Trump up there? Like, what's your take?
Probably similar to a lot of Americans. I don't know. Let me ask you this, Ryan. What do you think the overwhelming take is among, forget Republicans or Democrats, just among the average American? Do they think he's kind of a crazy fucking, nut job, or do they think he's making sense?
It depends what demographic of a person you talk to. Like here in Tampa Bay, we have the more St. Pete, Tampa Bay, city part. But if you go out into more of the middle of nowhere where it's the hardworking middle class, you will see them wearing Make America Great Again hats. They'll talk about how he's good for small business. I think 40% of America likes him, and then the flip side doesn't. I don't know. I don't know much about any of this. I'm not going to vote because I hate everybody. The one I hate, Howard, I fucking hate Ted Cruz. I fucking despise every single thing about that dude. He creeps me out. I do not like Ted Cruz. Oh, my God.
You're talking about, it's a tough subject because Donald Trump is as outrageous a character as he is, and a lot of Canadians. Here's what you want to know: what Canadians think. We think, "Oh my God, there's no way Americans could elect that guy."
Oh, and we will. He will be elected. Promise me. I believe it in my heart.
Well, here's what I say to people who think that he can't get elected. I say, well, let me take you back to a time in the late 40s and early 50s. There was this guy who did a series of movies with monkeys. And if you had said to somebody in 1957,
yes,
hey, I bet you one day that guy who does the monkey movies, you think he could be president? And they'd say, you're out of your fucking mind. And that's Ronald Reagan.
Exactly, yeah.
So, there's the old saying, never underestimate the ignorance of the American public. This is actually stupidity of the American public. You like that guy, if you go out, I've been in Tampa Bay, go out, take a 20-minute drive in either direction, and you'll find, as you say, tons of people who think Donald Trump is actually going to put up a wall to keep the Mexicans out because Mexicans are rapists. They actually think that. They
just get brainwashed by it, Howard. His fan base, I don't know if you've seen the Mike Judge movie, Idiocracy. It kind of reminds me of that. Have you seen it?
No, I love Mike Judge, though.
You have to see it. I don't know if you can get it on Netflix up there or something.
I've got U.S. Netflix, dude.
Idiocracy.
I just recently, I fooled my computer into thinking it's in the States.
You got to watch Idiocracy somehow. It's where Luke Wilson goes into the future. He gets frozen, and the whole world becomes retarded. And I swear to God, it's what America is right now if you go to different parts. And the fact that Trump's even running, dude, you will love it. You will be mind-fucked by it. You will be like, this is America. Maybe even a bit of Toronto or Canada. I think social media is ruining everything. It's great for radio and all, but I think it's ruining everything. Do you agree?
Well, I don't know if it's ruining everything. What it does is being interconnectivity is a wonderful thing when you share ideas or, the Arab Spring never would have happened if those people hadn't been able to look onto a computer and see that the rest of the world wasn't beating their women and not letting them go to school and, stoning people for having been raped. So that was a good thing. On the other hand, it seems to me that I don't think a lot of Americans are as aware of the rest of the world as the rest of the world is aware of America. So if you're a guy who has a computer and you live 20 minutes from Tampa or you're in Georgia, I don't see you searching. You just accept that. You probably think, well, there's a lot of gun murders. I guess there's a lot of gun murders everywhere in the world. You would never search number of gun murders versus in the rest of the G20 countries. If you did, you'd find out that the next 19 countries, England, Canada, Sweden, Germany, Japan, the next 19 don't have 1% of the number of gun deaths that America has in a year. So if you don't ever seek that knowledge, why would you have it?
Would you say that we are a bit self-centered as Americans? Because I think we are. I think the whole world is sort of like fascinated by us, but I think we are so self-centered that we know nothing about the rest of the world. Would you agree with that?
What it is, for a long time, here's the thing. The rest of the world is less fascinated by America than America might think. They're fascinated by some of the great. Listen, there's no doubt that there are amazing things that have come out of the United States. But what's the thing I always reference is there's a show that if you want to check it out, another great Netflix get is called the Newsroom, and it was written by Aaron Sorkin. It's got Jeff Daniels in it, but it's that famous clip online where a guy's at a university and a woman stands up and says, why can you comment on why is America the greatest country in the world? And he goes on a 3-minute monologue about how it's not the greatest country in the world. It's number 20 in education, number 30 in this, and number 15 in that. He said America leads the world in 3 categories: number of incarcerated citizens per capita, gun deaths, and the highest number of people in the world that believe in angels.
That's not that impressive. That does not sound good for us, Howard.
But that's the problem is most Americans still think they're number one, and they're not number one in almost anything anymore. But the problem is if you never seek out to, if it never occurs to you, like, I wonder how many gun deaths. Like, here's the thing: the population of America is 330 million. So if you take Germany, Japan, Canada, England, I don't know, add up another 5 or 6 countries, Australia, and add up 330 million. So let's say take 6, countries that you've heard of. Yeah. Australia, Canada, Japan. Take 6 of them, and I'll give you an example. Toronto has a population of around 6 million people. We just passed, I think last year we had 55 gun deaths. 55. A city the size of Toronto in the States would be, say, Chicago. They would have 55 a day, a weekend. You know what I mean?
I'm from there, dude. It's heartbreaking. It's like a war zone over there. And the worst part is there's this rapper named King Louie from there who came up with the name Chirac. And now whenever you think of Chicago, you don't think of the sports or the food or the architecture or the great summers or the concerts, anything that's great about that city. You think of King Louie's term, Chirac, and that dirtbag Spike Lee made us look pretty awful in that awful movie. So I don't know. It's sad what it's become.
All these things, listen, I don't want to turn this into a dissertation on. But you asked me about the differences between Canada and the States. The biggest difference. There's so many differences.
Yeah.
But we are obviously very U.S. Aware because a lot of our culture comes from there, and we're your nearest neighbor. And like I said, there's lots about. I lived in America. I lived in Los Angeles. There's lots about the states that have made changes in the world. But it used to be, and you check this speech out. It's called The Newsroom. You can Google this. At the end, he said, we used to be the greatest country in the world. We could be again, but it's almost like Americans used to value intelligence over what's popular. And now there's almost like, when you listen to Hannity or you listen to Bill O'Reilly, you watch Fox News, all they do is look for ways for me to make the country almost polarizing.
They want to separate people. You know what I mean? Right. It's so biased. That's why I have a hard time getting into this presidential race is I don't know where to turn to for unbiased news. I don't know, man. It's hard.
Here, I'll tell you where. Go and watch CBC Online. That's our national broadcaster. Watch the BBC Online. That's the.
I will.
Those are the places where you want to get a view of the states without the eyes of. See, the thing that bothers me about Fox is everything that President Obama does is wrong. That can't actually be true. There's got to be some stuff.
I don't think he's that bad. I don't know. Okay, listen, I voted for him. I like the guy. I think he's done some good things. I think it's because him being African-American, you obviously have the racism, and I just think he wasn't given a chance. And Congress, nobody can work together. It's been a waste of 8 years.
But Ryan, go look up, and this is another thing people don't realize. Go look up his record. He's actually done a lot of great things. But if you listen to, depending on who you watch, you would think he was the worst president that's ever been in office.
And what I love is his predecessor was an awful president. Bush.
Yeah.
We all seem to forget how much of a buffoon he was. Whatever. Moving on. It's Obama's fault.
Anyways, right, man. I don't know. This wasn't. I don't know if this is your normal topic or your, the kind of thing you want to talk about. But
I'm expanding my mind, dude.
Like I said, we Canadians are very aware of things that go on in the States. And having lived there and traveled there, and I did stand up for a long time, so I traveled all across the States doing clubs and. People are very, very. It's one of the. People are very friendly, and the people are. I love Americans' can-do spirit, and I love how Americans over Canadians. If you have an idea, Americans go like, "Shit, let's give this a shot." Whereas Canadians will be like, "I don't know, maybe we shouldn't. I don't want to. I'm sorry for thinking." Everyone we're. It's the spirit of America is what makes it still one of the greatest places in the world.
Now, I want to get your take on this, even though it's sort of old news. I feel like people would want to hear about it. What was your take overall on the Rob Ford era in Toronto? I want to get it from you. Like, what was your take on everything that happened?
Well, it was pretty cool, to tell you the truth. I mean, Rob, we've had him on our show for years, and the last time he was on was about 3 months ago, which is like a year and a bit after all of it blew up. And he couldn't have looked better. I mean, he's gone through cancer, lost 70 pounds, but he's, sober and clean. While it was happening, though, it was like being inside of a movie. You're thinking, is this fucking really happening? Is our mayor fucking doing crack in a park? Is it video of him, drinking vodka out of a bag? I mean, it was just unbelievable. And every day it would happen. It would be like, no, can this really be true? For us, it was rare for someone in Canada to be sort of known around the world for such outrageous, somewhat non-Canadian behavior. That being said, a lot of us here in Toronto were like, oh, my God, Rob Ford's a dick. Oh, he's wrecking the city. And for me, it was like, you just not enjoy this, but just watch this because, it's never happened before. You may never see anything like this again. In fact, it's funny because we had him on the show for almost an hour. And again, over the years, that was maybe his 10th to 11th, I don't know, appearance on it. So he knows us.
Yeah.
But I remember we were talking to him, and it was all very fun and kind, and he was... The thing about Rob is he cops to everything. Yes, I did coke. Yes, I was doing this. Yes, I bought crack, blah, blah, blah. But the one thing that one of the things he was famous for was the press conference where, he was accused of, a woman said he wanted to lick her pussy, blah, blah, and his famous quote in front of, hundreds of thousands of people saying, I get enough pussy to eat at home. And I said to him, which is fucking, again, amazing. A mayor was saying that at a press conference, no, I get enough to eat at home. So I said to him, sitting here, I said, hey, Rob, of all the things that you said during that sort of dark period, when you said that to the press conference, let me ask you, when you got home, when was the next time you got to, go to the buffet again? And he laughed. I'm like, what did your wife say? Hey, Rob, oh, by the way, the pussy eating contest will be closed now for a while.
Yeah, I was so surprised when he said that. I can't imagine what would happen if he said that down here or if any mayor said that down here. We would want them to resign, Howard, because words hurt.
Well, look dude, Marion Barry went to jail, smoked crack, had hookers, and was elected again.
It's a very good point.
If Rob Ford was, again, most Americans would be surprised that I would know who Marion Barry was. In fact, I'll bet you most Americans listening don't remember Marion Barry. But he was the mayor of Washington, very big figure. If Rob Ford's health holds up, and, there's a lot of people are saying it won't. He's, had a second round of cancer. But if he stayed healthy, and I know the current mayor, he's a great guy. He's a friend of ours named John Tory, who did radio for a few years. But if Rob Ford were healthy in 4 years, Rob Ford would give this guy a run for his money. Don't you think he wouldn't?
The best part about Rob Ford is the part that nobody talked about. Everyone talked about the crack and the Jamaican accent. My favorite part is that he supposedly groped one of the former mayor candidates, Sarah Thompson, and the blackout picture of him with his eyes closed. I'm looking at it, and he's got slobber all over his shirt.
No. One of the best is there's a moment in Toronto Council, the council chambers,
yeah.
And someone was saying something, and then he's running around the periphery of this big, meeting room, and he basically slams into an old woman Like, it's hysterical, the shit he did, man. Just unbelievable.
How good of a mayor was he for Toronto? Was he good?
Well, a lot of people forget that he did a lot of great things. He got a lot of stuff done. He got some subway things underway. I mean, all that stuff we've just talked about aside, the guy actually was loved by a lot of people, and he was very good at privatizing some garbage pickup. I mean, he wasn't a complete buffoon.
Yeah, it seems like people just think about his crack or the pussy-eating comment.
Hard not to.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like because nobody knew about him before, that's all they think about, but it's very unique to hear that there's a different side of Rob Ford. You know what I mean?
All right, I'm sorry. I'm just getting a wrap-up here from my 17-year-old. Ryan, I'm sorry. Is there much more you want to talk about? Because I feel like you and I we could hang out here all day.
Hell yeah, dude. I would love to have you on anytime. Before I let you go, where can people hear your show?
The easiest way, if you don't have, well, obviously, if you have SiriusXM, we always say, listen, sometimes Howard takes like 10 or 12-minute, commercial breaks, or if he's talking to somebody you don't like, we're on at the same time as Stern, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern, plus they repeat our show at 10 a.m. Eastern at 168. So if you have SiriusXM, it's part of the Comedy Channel package. Like there's Raw Dog, there's Laugh USA, and our channel's called Canada Laughs. So when we're not on, the rest of it is all stand-up comedy. Also, if you want, and you don't have to pay for the show, it's humbleandfredradio.com. We're on. You can go to our website, download the show directly, or go to iTunes and search for Humble and Fred Radio.
Don't you guys have an app too?
Yes, we have an app as well.
I have an app too, so we're both pretty badass.
Something. Yeah.
Well, Howard,
Ryan.
keep up the good
Hoppe.
work.
Listen, dude. When are you going to post this?
I will have this up within 25 minutes. It's real fast to edit.
Do me a favor. Just send me an email or text me.
All right.
And tomorrow morning when we do the show on Sirius, I'll give you a shout-out, okay?
That means a lot, Howard. Thank you so much.
A real pleasure, and let's do this again, okay?
Sounds good. You were a very good co-host on Hoppe Hour today.
I appreciate that, man. Take care, Ryan, dude.
All right. Thank you, man.
No worries.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour.